advocate for over 2 decades now. And today we are going to talk about a very important endocrine gland, the thyroid gland.
Yes. In fact, January is Thyroid Awareness Month. If I don't know, sure if you knew that.
I did. We're going to cover what role the thyroid plays in your overall health, some of the factors that lead to thyroid problems like Hashimotos and Graves' disease, and how C60 can help support thyroid function.
And we're live today, so we're ready for your questions. And so put them in the comments now.
And we would love to share your stories. If you have a thyroid issue that you've been working with C60 for, please tell us your experience, what you've learned. I know I've also experienced some things. I'll share my story today about that. But please let us know in the comments.
Okay, well, let's get started, shall we?
Yes. But first, before we dive in, the following statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Individual results may vary. So let's start with the thyroid. It is the master gland of the endocrine system. And so it affects all the systems of the body that you can think of, really. The lungs, the heart rate, the central and peripheral nervous systems, your body weight affects metabolism, muscle strength. It affects the menstrual cycle, ladies, your body temperature, your cholesterol levels. And basically what the thyroid does is it uses iodine to create thyroid hormones. And we'll get into some of that. But first, let's talk about some common thyroid conditions. We've got hypothyroid, which is an underactive thyroid.
That's usually the most common.
That is the most common. And the number one cause of hypothyroid is actually Hashimoto's disease, which is autoimmune. So the body actually is creating antibodies that go and attack the tissue. We'll talk further about that. And the same thing with hyperthyroid. This is an overactive thyroid. But Graves' disease is the number one cause of hyperthyroid, and that too is an autoimmune condition.
Yeah, it tends to, they send out antibodies which block the receptors.
Yes.
So it kind of puts the thyroid in hyperdrive.
Right. So your body isn't really receiving or able to use the thyroid hormone like it's supposed to. Now, there's some symptoms to watch for. We don't need to go through all of these, but I just want to show you that, thyroidism is something that really goes undiagnosed. And there are a lot of people that have it. I don't know the statistics yet because I need to pull those up. But basically what I want to show you here is that, you can go to the doctor and say you're having a hard time losing weight. And the doctor will say, well, go to the gym and work out. You're gaining too much weight. You need to go to the gym and work out, which is actually the worst thing you can do for your thyroid. It's just going to, the thyroid is very sensitive and you're putting more stress on the thyroid. That's not going to help you. And then anxiety, depression, nervousness. Yeah, they might actually prescribe an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety drug. Is that going to help the problem? No, that is also not going to help the problem. The other thing that happens is that doctors tend to diagnose the problem and they will prescribe medications and hormone replacement therapy, but they won't look at the autoimmune part. They're kind of perplexed by that, like what causes the autoimmune thing to happen in the first place, right? That's what we want to look at a little bit today. So here are some factors, that can lead to thyroid problems and also autoimmune problems, Adrenal dysfunction. If you have adrenal dysfunction, then, you really can't separate the thyroid from the adrenal glands. They're closely connected. And unfortunately, in allopathic medicine, traditional medicine, they kind of treat every single organ and gland in the body as a separate thing that they can just, so they specialize in this one organ of the body when it's funny because it's really all connected. The digestion system, it's also the liver, it's also the kidney. It's like all these different things work together in tandem to make this happen.
Yeah, and the adrenal glands sit right on top of the kidneys. So when your kidneys aren't functioning properly, you can also have adrenal problems.
Exactly. And that makes sense why I would have thyroid problems, because I also have adrenal problems, which is what I had in the beginning.
Yeah, and most organs or cells in the body actually have receptors for the thyroid hormone.
Yes.
And that's why it affects so many of the different organs, because it's like the master gland and it sends out little messages to all the parts of the body.
All right, we'll get through some of these quicker. And then also our environmental toxins can really play a big role in how our immune system responds.
Yeah, that's lead and mercury there for those heavy metal toxicities.
Food sensitivities, really, really important. The leaky gut, what happens if you have a food sensitivity? There'll be some inflammation in the gut, and that will cause impermeability in the gut.
Yeah.
So food is actually allowed to escape into the bloodstream, and if it's not fully digested yet, the cells can't use it, so they flag it. The immune system flags it for destruction. So some things like gluten and dairy, the protein actually is a very, very similar molecule as the thyroid, what makes up the thyroid tissue. So when the immune system goes around flagging all the gluten proteins or the dairy proteins, it's also going to mistakenly flag the thyroid tissue, which makes sense why it
and a lot of those
attacked.
And the food sensitivities we're talking here, if you've got like glyphosates in your grains that you're eating and a lot of herbicides and pesticides on your foods, I mean, that also has a big thing, because it'll damage the intestinal ecosystem. So that's a huge part of it too, is be careful what you're eating. We always recommend organic, of course.
Yeah, and there's different problems that can cause thyroid issues. Some people, they're making enough of the hormone T4, but it's not converting into T3, which is the actual usable hormone by the cells, which is what the hormone that the cells need. So there's, those thyroid hormones can't convert if you don't have those good bacteria lining the gut to help it convert it. So
because the small intestines actually has to secrete intestinal sulfatase to turn T4 into T3, which is the active form. And that's what your thyroid, it's right here, and it produces, basically produces two hormones, T3 and T4. And all it stands is there's tyrosine, basically, is there's three of those amino acids that are put together, and they have, either you have 4 iodines on it or you have 3. And T3 is the active form, and T4 is like an inactive form. But then that inactive form, as the body needs it, can be converted into T3. So that basically what happens is it just takes off an iodine, and then it becomes a form that can interact with your cells.
Right. And it actually needs nutrients to do that, which brings me to the next topic, was nutrient deficiencies.
Yeah.
If you have a low, traditionally iodine is looked at as a factor, right? But and also selenium, those are both important that you need for the conversion. But what's interesting about iodine is you might have plenty of iodine, but you're not able to, the thyroid's not able to use it, because what's happening is you might have fluoride that you're drinking in your tap water, or I would definitely avoid fluoride toothpaste, because that can block the receptor for the iodine. Yeah,
because fluoride is in the same chemical family as iodine. So the body can take fluoride, the thyroid can take fluoride and make, like a T3, but it's part of it's fluoride, and that's not going to work. So, and a lot of, especially the various drugs that they use for neurological problems.
Yes.
Most of those based on fluoride. And so when you got way too much fluoride in your body, then you have problems. And of course, there's also the fluoride in the water.
Yes.
Which that's another big one. So filtered water or water without fluoride, and especially chloride, also can do that, though generally chlorine doesn't do as much as the fluoride does, but chlorine's also in the same family as iodine. So you have to be careful on all of those things.
And back to the exposure to toxins, pesticides and plastics, they are estrogenic, and they can block the estrogen receptors. So also causing estrogen dominance. And there's a real link, it's been well studied, between estrogen dominance and thyroid issues. And these are endocrine disruptors. That's what they're called. So they can disrupt other endocrine glands as well. And then, of course, other hormone imbalances will also affect the thyroid because all of the hormones are talking to each other. The thyroid is the master gland, but if someone's miscommunicating and they're not firing right, it's just there's a kink in the whole system. So when you're looking at, there might be several people diagnosed with hypothyroid, but they all got there and for a different reason. And that's the part that we have to really recognize, because a one-size-fits-all treatment or a one-size-fits-all regimen or protocol isn't always going to work for everyone.
Yeah, and things like Hashimoto's is not primarily a thyroid disease. It's a disease of other parts of the body that shows up in the thyroid, primarily a gut disease.
Yeah.
So.
It's definitely autoimmune. So other things that can trigger thyroid issues is like something like a virus, like Epstein-Barr. That can make the immune system kind of go haywire, of course.
Yeah, and that's something with a lot of what they call autoimmune diseases. It's not an autoimmune disease. It's basically the body is attacking. There's a virus hanging out in an organ or tissue, and then the body goes after that virus in organ or tissue, and of course that damages that organ or tissue, and so they call it autoimmune, but it's not really autoimmune. It's a reaction of the body to some invader.
Also, systemic inflammation. This is a huge one. This we'll come back to again and again. Inflammatory related diseases are on the rise. And unfortunately, the toxins we're being exposed to, the oxidative stress from those toxins and radiation, this inflammation is on the rise. So how do we get rid of systemic inflammation? We will touch on that a little bit today, because we're going to talk about C60 and how that can really, really help. And then oxidative stress is another one that we'll discuss around the C60.
Yes, and
because this inflammation oxidative stress is what causes inflammation. So these two are just and
systemic
connected.
Inflammation, when you have it, it's going to do damage to like your dopamine production. And but the hypothalamus of the pituitary gland actually releases TRH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone.
TSH.
TSH, sure, yes, and so that is so if you don't have enough dopamine, and so that's a whole bunch of there's a whole bunch of series of where your problem is. Is the problem in the hypothalamus and pituitary, and that's doing it. So it takes a little bit of detective work to figure these things out.
And that's why it's underdiagnosed, why hyperthyroid and hypothyroid's underdiagnosed, because the gold standard used to be that the doctors would just test your TSH levels, right? But what would happen is people may have just their TSH levels might be normal. They're looking for TSH levels that are too high. They might be normal, but they're not able to convert that T4 to T3 or somewhere downstream from that. They're having an issue.
And there's various other things. I guess we'll probably get to that, like the T. There's reverse T3. And which isn't active. So and then they'll also really a good doctor. You should ask for this. Ask your doctor to test for antibodies that particularly attack the thyroid. And we won't get into like the details of what antibodies to test for. It's very complicated, but the doctor will probably know. So, and you can look all this stuff online, and that's another thing. Just don't take our word for anything.
Yes,
you need to go online and research it yourself before even you see the doctor. So you already kind of have a basis of understanding, and this is true for any disease or issue. I mean, if you have something, if they say you have something, you need to go and research it yourself.
Yes,
because you are your second opinion, basically.
Yes, and you need to be your own advocate, because the doctors aren't going to look at this. And sometimes it's not a matter of going to the doctor. You might need to go to the doctor for lab tests and diagnoses, but sometimes it's a matter of going to a functional medicine nutritionist or somebody that can help you with the lifestyle and the daily habits that you do that will support your thyroid. And then chronic stress is another one of of those things.
That's another thing. Yeah, because if you're under chronic stress, you're going to do adrenaline, you're going to be cortisol, and that can be like a thing called pregnenolone steal, especially as you're older, because your cells make basically they make pregnenolone, which is the precursor for all the hormones. If your cells aren't making enough pregnenolone, and you're under a lot of stress, then all that pregnenolone, which is going to make cortisol or adrenaline or some other stress hormone, and there isn't enough left for all the other hormones to make sure your body's functioning properly. And it's called pregnenolone steal, and you can look that up online and learn a little bit more about it.
Right. So you need to have the building blocks for all of these things. Like we said before, if you have hormone imbalances, the imbalance could be you have way too much cortisol pumping through your system, which causes the leaky gut, which causes a lot of other issues. The stress will cause your immune system to go haywire.
Yeah, a lot of people have been under stress lately.
Oh, yeah.
And our modern society tends to promote like this chronic stress, the dog eat dog world or something.
Yeah. Stress is one of those things that we could talk about all day and how to manage it, because it's a real struggle. It's a real thing.
Yes, it is.
And people manage stress in different ways, some that are healthy and some that are not so healthy. Yes. So I'd love to do a show about stress. Do you guys want us to do a show about stress? Let us know in the comments. All right. Eating meat and dairy, I did touch on this a little bit. But not only is it a problem for, the antibody production but it's also a problem, being that it's an allergen for a lot of people.
Yeah, because there's the synthetic hormones like bovine growth hormone. That's not good for you.
Yes, so it's also a problem that it also contains hormones and antibiotics. So that's a kind of a double whammy. Right?
Yeah, especially the antibiotics, because the antibiotics will get in there and then they'll damage the intestinal flora, which you need for a healthy gut. And that can cause inflammation and the leaky gut syndrome.
And the hormones are telling your body what to do. You don't want those hormones telling you what to do.
Yes, because those hormones are telling chickens and cows what to do.
I know, but that's
and you
just
don't need that. So that's another thing. Eat organic if you can. I know you can't always do that, but whatever you can, eat organic.
Yes, absolutely. And one more thing about dairy. And this is something I didn't want to do, okay? I finally quit dairy. It was actually a lot easier than I thought. It was a lot easier than quitting caffeine, actually. But about 50% of people that have a gluten allergy or a gluten intolerance also have a dairy intolerance, because the protein molecule is very similar, the casein protein molecule. So this is what it looks like. This is, if you're not seeing the slide because you're listening to the podcast, you won't see it. But what we're looking at here is the thyroid with a bunch of antibodies attaching to it and attacking it.
Yeah, and antibodies are basically shaped like little Ys. And the top part of the Y is where the attack is. And then there's the back end, which is the stem. That's sort of that attacks it, and the stem tells the macrophage, this is a problem. We need to do something about it. So that's that's how it kind of works. And it just attacks the thyroid for multiple reasons. That's one of the things with anything with the immune system. It's really, really complicated. And then it's usually woven into a whole bunch of the different organs. And there just isn't one simple solution.
Yeah, that's why really looking at your gut health and your digestion is so, so important, because that's your first line of defense. Your skin, the barrier, not just the skin on the outside of your body, but the skin that makes up the, large and small intestines, that is your barrier. And if that is inflamed, and if if things are leaking out, then what has to happen is the second line of defense, which is your antibodies and your immune system in the bloodstream, has to kick into gear. Yeah. That's when things start to go awry. Yeah,
and 70% of your immune system is associated with the gut, because the gut is where you'd be most likely invaded from foreign things.
Yes.
So that's where the immune system is, kind of located. And so when you have a gut problem, you have problems all over your body.
And our bodies are made up of more bacteria than they are cells.
Yes, and those bacteria, like I think half the serotonin in our body is actually produced by bacteria in the gut. And of course, serotonin is needed for a whole bunch of things. So it's just, it's a healthy gut is the number one thing for a healthy body.
Right. And we talked about toxins, but not only are there toxins in your environment outside of your body, but there are toxins in your body that are a result of like bad bacteria, yeast, and things that shouldn't be proliferating there. But anyway, moving on. The other thing is, like Hashimoto's and Graves' disease, those are autoimmune disease where the antibodies attack the thyroid. But also autoimmune diseases can affect all different areas of the body, really. The bones and muscles, the lungs, the brain, that's MS, right?
Yeah.
The lungs, I said, that's asthma, the nerves, the skin. Yeah. So problems like psoriasis. And a lot of people don't realize these are actually conditions that are autoimmune conditions.
Yeah, and inflammatory diseases are like probably 50% of the cause of death in today's things that come from it. There's so many things that come. Autoimmune, of course, causes inflammation, like rheumatoid arthritis and arterial sclerosis and all those things. So it's really probably the biggest health problem that we have in the modern world, because, in the past, a lot of times infectious diseases were a big thing. But those have been pretty much gone through modern medicine, and now we have basically inflammatory diseases, which are caused usually by an autoimmune conditions, and so that's and also in our modern environment. So, and because people are living a lot longer, so that's what you really have to focus on.
And that's one of the ways C60 can help. C60 supports thyroid function in 3 main ways. Number 1, it balances hormones.
Yep, and that's basically pregnenolone.
Yes.
Because the mitochondria, C60 works in the cell primarily by stimulating the mitochondria. And the mitochondria are little organelles in the cell, and they're the energy powerhouses of the cell. They make the ATP, which is your energy molecule that runs 95% of the metabolism in your cell. So that's really important, especially as we get older. A lot of the antioxidants that the bigger cell, like SOD and catalase, that the mitochondria need to run goes down. And so your mitochondria can't function as much. So you don't make as much energy to make your cells work. And of course, if you don't have enough energy, problems happen. Well, you take C60, it completely replaces those missing antioxidants. So now your mitochondria can run at full activity. And the other thing mitochondria do is they actually make pregnenolone, which is the precursor molecule for all the hormones. And that comes from LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol.
Yes.
In fact, that's why people get bad cholesterol problems as they get older, because their mitochondrial function goes down. The LDL builds up in the body where it used to be turned into pregnenolone, which are needed hormones and other chemicals that your body needs. And so when your mitochondria go back up, the pregnenolone level goes back up, your hormone levels go back, and your LDL cholesterol goes down.
That's interesting, because high cholesterol, can be connected and associated with people with thyroid. The people with thyroid conditions do tend to have a higher cholesterol. So it's interesting. We heard a story from one of our customers that said she was able to get off her cholesterol medicine, her thyroid medicine. So now it's kind of making sense. Yes. And her blood pressure medicine. Now it's kind of making sense, because you fix one of those things, you're going to kind of fix.
Yeah, and it's like in your adrenal glands. If you don't have enough pregnenolone, well, first off, you got to have ATP to run everything in the cell. That's a great benefit, but that helps every cell. But when you don't have enough pregnenolone, then you can't make the hormones, and if you don't have the hormones, then everything else doesn't work. So that's what's so great about C60. Restores mitochondrial function and pregnenolone, and then the cells got what they need to get the job done.
Yeah, and as you age, hormone production drastically declines.
Yes.
Yes. And that's why a lot of these issues will come up as you're, getting older.
Because, really the people that use C60 tend to be the gray haired crowd, because, when you're really young, you don't have a lot of these problems. But as you get older, these things come up.
All of a sudden.
Yes,
Oh, okay. I need to start doing
happened?
Something. Right.
Oh.
All right. Well, C60 also supports the body in repairing damage to the thyroid. Now, this is a consequence I did not expect, because I was doing, the same thing. But when I started taking C60 after a year and a half, I went back to the doctor and got a blood test, and they said, "Oh, you don't need to be on all this thyroid medication." She cut my dose by 2/3. So that was something that was really surprising to me.
And there's a whole bunch of things. For C60 brings back gut health, which then you don't have the leaky gut syndrome, which means you reduces your inflammation.
Get to that next,
okay, and so it does all these different things. And of course, also it's sort of downplays or helps regulate the whole immune response, so you don't get these hyperimmune reactions.
Well, let's take it one at a time.
Okay, let's take it. Okay.
So it supports the body in repairing damage to the thyroid. Okay, the other thing that declines as you age is stem cell production.
Oh, yes.
And you need stem cells to create gut cells, okay, to turn over the gut cells. And as you age, with those stem cells declining, that turnover rate is going to slow down. And what's going to happen is, like with the skin cells, same thing, that skin is going to get thinner, and that's your barrier. So it's really important. I think that's what, I tried all these diets to heal my gut, and I was drinking bone broth every day for like 2 years, did nothing. I mean, it did make me feel better, but it didn't help it didn't do anything to move the needle as far as my thyroid condition.
Well, part of that is when C60 gets in there and runs up the mitochondria. If like you have a senescent cell, and that's like a zombie cell, it's got shortened telomeres, it can't really do anything anymore. It's just sitting around pulling energy. When you put what it does, instead of wanting to pass away, it tunes down mitochondria function. You turn mitochondria function back up, it sends messages. And if the mitochondria don't get the right messages back from the nuclear DNA of the cell, it initiates apoptosis, which is basically programmed cell death. So all those senescent, non-functioning cells in your body go away. And when that happens, that stimulates the body, says, all these cells are gone, so we need replacements. And then that stimulates the whole process of stem cells. Because we've had people in their 70s and they go in to do stem cell therapy, and they have stem cell levels of somebody in their 20s. And we've had lots of cases of that. And so and of course, if you have lots of stem cells, then they can go in. First off, the C60 wipes out those senescent non-functioning cells, and then it'll stimulate stem cells. The stem cells go in there, replace the missing cells. And these stem cells have like a full set of telomeres. They're like young cells. And so now they can get the job done. And so that's why probably your thyroid came back, because literally your thyroid has rebuilt itself.
Yeah,
with
tissue
new,
of the thyroid
new cells that can do the job
that it needed.
And that helps. It's
like a refresh.
Yeah, but that just doesn't help your thyroid. That helps C60 has been known to, your liver, your kidney, and knees. It'll regrow cartilage. C60 is this amazing stimulation of cartilage regrowth because it gets in there, wipes out the senescent cells, and then there's this huge stimulation for cartilage regrowth. Basically stem cells go in there and make new cartilage.
And it's well known that, antioxidants are really important for treating autoimmune conditions, because those free radicals caused by the oxidative stress, those are what cause inflammation. That's what causes, the autoimmune condition. That's what causes the immune system to get confused. So antioxidants are really, really important in general, but the C60 is able to replace a lot of missing antioxidants because you can't supplement some of these antioxidants. Your body has to make them. So what C60 is, it can actually is like the Swiss Army knife of antioxidants.
Yeah. So like if you look at like SOD, which is superoxide dismutase, that's got to be made in your body. Catalase got to be made in your body. Glutathione's got to be made in your cells, basically. The only one you can supplement with CoQ10. But, and that's another thing. C60 does a specific job, but so and it doesn't replace other things. You still need to get your vitamin D. You still need to get your vitamin C, your vitamin E, your B vitamins. It doesn't replace that. C60 does a specific job, but if you don't have like a good nutrient base in your body, that's why taking a multi-supplement is so important.
So besides the antioxidants, the other thing that's really important is that you eliminate any foods that you're allergic to. And I know I didn't mention this before, but you can do an elimination diet to find out what foods you're sensitive to and start ruling those things out.
Yeah. And another thing, if you have food sensitivities, there's a rule that they found very effective, and that's only eat a food once every 4 days. Because it's when you really have food sensitivity problems, that you're eating the same food every day, and then you get this chronic thing. So what happens if you eat it every 4 days? Well, you eat it once, the body might react to it because it doesn't come around again. Then it kind of shuts down and does something else. But if you have it every day, you get that hyper-stimulation. So if you do the one type of food every 4 days, that's a huge thing that you can help. You can start that right off.
Never heard of that.
Yeah, that's an excellent little thing.
Okay, now we can get to regulate.
Here we go. The immune and inflammatory response. Yeah, because C60 gets into the immune cells too, and it helps moderate. First, it gives off the immune cells, got their ATP production back up, so they're functioning correctly. And it helps moderate a lot of the immune response, so you don't get hyper reactions. And that's like a lot of people that had allergies. Their allergies pretty much go away when you're on C60 because it modifies the immune response in, you have to have all these the mast cells release the histamines, but then B and T cells can stimulate the mast cells. So you have this whole chain, and C60 just moderates it all. So you don't get the cytokine storm. And that's really, really important, especially for today's stuff.
Did we talk? Oh, we did talk about okay. One more thing I wanted to share before we start taking live Q&A questions, of course, we always like to share a testimonial every show. And this one's from Erica. She says, I love C60 Purple Power. It has been such a miracle for me. I'm regaining my life. I'm learning new things. I just started gardening. That's my new jam. Every day I'm getting stronger and stronger. My thyroid is at optimal levels, whereas before it was barely functioning. I've been working so hard to overcome my ailments, and C60 has been the key factor in making everything better for me. I was told a long time ago that I would write a book, and come to find out, I actually do have a lot to say. And C60 Purple Power will definitely be in the acknowledgement section with a big Texas heartfelt thank you.
Great to hear that, Erica.
Thank you. So glad to hear it. And there are more stories.
Oh yeah, we have so many. We'd be here the whole time just reading testimonial after testimonial. Yeah. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of them.
Yes. And if you have a story, again, I'm going to ask you, please share it with the community, share it in the comments, because we all benefit from hearing about these things. There are some great research studies out there, but really our experiences are so valuable to add to the story of what really C60 does for us. So thank you for sharing those. I think we're ready for some live questions.
Well, let's make that happen.
Okay. I know we've got a few that we can start with. We got a few emails this week.
Oh, yes. Well,
when we
announce our shows, a lot of times if you see our show come out in the newsletter or the announcement, you can always send in a question.
Yeah. And some of the questions
that's great.
are longer.
So we can go through those and get good answers for you.
Right. And then if you ever want to keep it confidential, you can do it that way. Yes, we do.
I do. Yeah, if you have that, I can answer those questions privately, and I do a lot of those.
Just tell us you don't want us to mention your name. That's fine. All right. Let's see. Mike says, I'm looking forward to the C60 show this week. I've been on 1 grain of natural thyroid for about 4+ years and looking to lower my dosage or get off completely. I'm currently taking 2 teaspoons of C60 per day. I think a tablespoon might have been too much or not. What are your suggestions? I tried listening to that's something that we had to send to support. She was trying to listen to the podcast and our voices were going really, 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 really fast. I think she's got her player set to 1.5 times.
Yeah, something, yes.
So just change your player. But yeah, we can answer the question about, I only take a teaspoon a day. It really depends on how much you weigh. Let's see. And it's...
Well, there's 2 things in that.
It's Kimberly, so we know she's a female.
Yep. Yeah. It's
most thyroid diseases affect women.
Yes. I think women are 10 times more likely to have a thyroid disease than men.
Yeah.
And pregnancy and a few other things have something to do with that.
Yes. Actually, pregnancy can bring it on because it kind of makes the hormones go haywire. But anyway, to answer your question, a teaspoon should be plenty. I mean, I guess I will say how much I weigh. I'm like around 120 and I take a teaspoon and that's plenty. Any more than that, I get the zoomies. And that's with the MCT, which is not as concentrated as the AVO or the EVOO. If you're taking those, you can actually decrease your dosage and even more.
Yeah. And there's 2 things with that. That's body weight and age. When you're younger, your antioxidants are a little bit higher and everything else is running. So as you get older, like you get in the gray hair crowd, you probably need to double up. So if you were, let's say in your 70s, a tablespoon might be more appropriate. Whereas when you're 30s, a teaspoon is better.
Right. But I would ask your doctor to test for antibodies, because if you do have antibodies present that do attack the thyroid, then that could be part of your problem, which means you need to address that. Which actually you might want to address through looking at your diet and eliminating any foods that you're sensitive to, which we've already spoken about.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand that people get allergic to foods and they say, how did this happen? And they've discovered now, let's say you get infected with some, nasty salmonella or something else in the food, and you get, obviously your immune system is going to react to those nasty bacteria in your gut. Well, what often happens, if you ate that food that you ate the toxics with, the body will not only react to the bacteria, but it also reacts to the food because it associates the food that you ate with the bacteria. And so then from then on, your body can have like an immune response when you eat that food, even though it doesn't have any of the nasty bacteria in it. And it's just a mistake that the body makes, but it happens anyway. And that's something you have to be aware of.
I've got a question from Mike. He's asking about can C60 help the body detox gadolinium, which is a heavy metal, right?
Yeah, gadolinium. Yeah, I think in NMRs they use gadolinium for because it shows up very, very brightly. It's a heavy metal, and I think 1 out of like 20 people have a bad reaction to gadolinium when they use it. And so, yeah.
It can cause oxidative stress.
Yeah, because sometimes, I know, C60 is known to take like, it's for inorganic metals that are in like an active form, like a mercury hydroxide will turn into a mercury oxide, and then it can be excreted by the body. So the same thing with, some active metal, inorganic active metals can be converted into inactive or heavy metals that the body can now excrete. So they've definitely found that out with C60.
We just got another question via email. Christine says, does C60 help with hyperthyroidism as well? So an overproduction of thyroid. Oh,
yeah, because she
has Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune condition as well.
Yeah, and that's what C60 would moderate the immune response. And so we have lots and lots of people. Yeah. It's kind of like an allergy. You're kind of allergic to something in your body. And so it definitely moderate the response, and it could reduce it on that way. And another way also is a lot of times like Epstein-Barr and these other viruses, they might be hiding out in your thyroid. And so your immune system is attacking wherever that, a virus is throwing out. So basically by strengthening your whole immune system and your health, then you can get rid of a lot of those viral things. The Epstein-Barr virus is a really common, most everybody has it, something like 95% of the people. And it's a really underlying health problem that the modern medical system really isn't dealing with. These retroviruses, these underlying things, and same with like Lyme disease with bacteria. There's another one. People were dismissing Lyme disease for all these years. Oh, you have this, you have that, and now they finally found, it's a really serious problem. And there are certain antibiotics that will totally wipe out the Lyme disease. You got to take them for about 6 months, and then you can get healthy again. So you have to realize that a lot of times what people call autoimmune diseases are actually some underlying problem of bacteria or viruses that need to be dealt with.
Yeah, and the problem with Graves' disease is that because the body's not able to use the form of thyroid hormone that it's creating, I guess it's not converting or something, it's actually kicking out more and more TSH to create. And so then it's doing an overproduction of these thyroid hormones. Right?
Yeah, because what happened is the antibodies are attacking the receptors on the thyroid tissue.
Right, okay.
So then the receptors that tell that tell the thyroid, hey, you need to reduce your thyroid stuff. So it's attacking those. So the messages from, let's say, from the pituitary hypothalamus can't get to the thyroid to tell it to shut down because the thyroid, receptors are blocked.
Yeah, so the thyroid's getting the message to keep making more because there's not enough.
It's not being getting the shutdown message. Okay. It's the same with the estrogen receptors. A lot of these BPA and these other estrogen imitating chemicals will get in there and they'll block the estrogen receptors on cells in your body. And so their cells can't get the estrogen, but they're saying, oh, I need estrogen. They put out this more stuff, but now you're getting more estrogen and it just jacks everything up. And that's of course another thing with diet. It's like eating organic, trying to eat the cleanest diet. And of course, this is another thing we talk about because thyroid, Hashimotos is basically an intestinal disease. It's caused by leaky gut and irritation in there. And so you can't get the whole process because T3 needs to be activated because it's bound to a protein, but it has to go down there and get the intestinal sulfatase to make it active. So if your intestines aren't working, then even if you're making enough T3 and it looks like you have enough T3 in your blood test, it doesn't matter because that T3 is not being turned into a form that your body can use. And that's all caused by the gut.
I'm glad you mentioned that because, these low carb diets, unfortunately, are a disaster waiting to happen for people with thyroid conditions because you need fiber. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of fiber. When you cut out the fruit and you cut out the whole grains and you cut out the legumes, that fiber that those foods have feed the good bacteria. Our camera just went away.
Oh, that's not good.
That's really weird. Stopped it.
We're back. Little bump there.
Technology.
Yeah. And so that's really important because fiber also, there's like certain bacteria that need to digest fiber. And those are often the good bacteria and they produce a whole lot of things. Like another thing is they produce hydrogen. And hydrogen gas is necessary for good health. That's one of the reasons why having fiber is so good for you. It'll produce, the average person who eating a proper fiber diet will produce like 11 liters of hydrogen gas, which the body uses as an antioxidant and a signaling molecule. And by the way, C60 is a hydrogen sponge. So it makes that hydrogen that your body produces so much more efficient. So there's another thing. So yeah, a good diet is...
You mean the hydrogen makes the C60 more efficient?
Yes, because this hydrogen is a C60 sponge. And that's how C60 works. It's basically, here's our little molecule. And what C60 does, especially in the mitochondria, it can store up to 6 hydrogen ions on the inside, or hydrogen gas on the inside of its cage-like structure. And so let's say an oxidative, like a hydroxyl radical, comes floating by, touches it, and it's negatively charged. C60 is now positively charged because it's got positive hydrogen ions inside of it. That negatively charged oxidative radical will be attracted to the C60, and like hydroxyl radical will be converted into water. And then the C60 resets itself again and again and again. And that's the secret. So that's, of course, that hydrogen gas is so great for you.
Okay, so we already answered a question. We've got a few questions about Graves' disease, actually. Does fluoride affect that as well?
Yeah, fluoride will just jack up everything, because what it'll do is
chlorine. Yeah,
and chlorine. So you should try to get those out of your diet, like fluoride toothpaste. Sometimes you can put filters on your shower, because your skin is actually the largest surface organ in your body, and so you can absorb a lot of chlorine or fluorine in your fluoride from your skin surface. And of course, there's no reason to have fluoride in the water. It doesn't really help teeth. There's a whole other reason that which gets censored, so we can't talk about that. But anyway, So there's just all ways you can do it. There's filters you can put on for your water you drink, but you also need filters sometimes on your shower, and get rid of the fluoride and some things like black tea has a lot of fluoride in it. So you need to look at a lot of your different things that you're eating that have like maybe too much fluoride in them. A lot of your processed foods, they're made with fluorinated water. So the fluoride gets in your processed food. And so that's why eating organic is really good. And fresh, full foods, fresh vegetables right from the garden or the farm or wherever that are organic. Yeah. So it's just, if you talk to a good vet and they talk about animal health, and you'll say, what is the most important things about animal health? And they say diet, diet, diet.
Yep.
And it's the same for us. Good diet. If you get good things going in, you get good health.
Okay. Do you know much about titanium? Is that damaging at all? Because
titanium has almost no reaction with the body.
Okay.
That's why they use titanium joints for like hip replacement joints. And the reason is because titanium will not go into solution, will not become ions, and doesn't really react with anything at all in the body.
Do you know if C60 lowers histamine levels?
Oh yeah, it does, because it slows the release of histamine from the mast cells, because they have like the plasma cells send out little signals, so it reduces the amount of signals coming out of the plasma cells, which then go to which then stimulate the mast cells, which have the histamine, but also reduces the release of the histamine. So yeah, it'll definitely reduce the inflammation levels and the from histamine. We know that there's scientific studies on that, by the way.
Definitely there are.
Yeah.
Watch our show about allergies, C60 and allergies.
Yeah, it's just amazing how it does.
Here we go. I'm gonna try and answer this.
Okay.
One. Do you recommend a specific type of fiber on an anti-inflammatory diet? Yes, actually. Whole grains like brown rice and quinoa, the fiber around the insoluble fiber around which is the outside.
So that's a whole grain. They need to have the whole grain.
They need to have the whole grain is always better. And then legumes. And the trick, I hear all this stuff about lectins, but unfortunately, the research just doesn't say that lectin, and there's lectins found in fruits and vegetables. I mean, we're able to convert these lectins with the enzymes in our body. So I'm not worried about lectins. Yeah. What I would be more worried about is having a deficiency in B vitamins. Whole grains and legumes are packed with B vitamins. And again, the fiber is really helpful for the probiotic.
Yeah. And as you get older, your ability to process B vitamins goes down. So I would definitely, yeah, exactly. So I would definitely think about getting like a B vitamin supplement. Mm-hmm. And the key, especially for Hashimoto's and all these other things, is B12. People are just so deficient in B12, especially as you get older, it's harder to process that. So you need extra amounts. So B12 supplementation does a huge thing. And there's a lot of things, actually, a lot of the what you call symptoms of Hashimoto's and some of these other diseases are actually the same as B12 deficiencies. And so think, oh, I've got this disease, thyroid disease, whatever. You might not. You might just have a B12 deficiency. So getting B12, and then also have like all the other B vitamins are really important too. And so getting a supplementation on that is like huge.
Now you don't need to eat, brown rice every day with every meal. That's not what we're saying. You want it to be a moderate level, but you also don't want to cut it completely out of your diet. You want to have a moderate level of those things in your diet. You don't want to have beans at every meal either.
Yeah,
so.
And people, it's like the paleo diet. People talk about the paleo diet and they think they were hunting animals. But if you actually they actually studied hunter and gatherer groups that are still on Earth or were on Earth for a while. They go out and they actually, most of their diet is from gathering. The women go out and gather, and so that's like roots and vegetables and berries and other plant-based things and small animals. That is like a huge part of the diet. Probably 50%.
Whole grains is part of that too.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
have found whole grains and grass, especially from the grasses, the seeds from the grasses in their.
Yeah, the whole thing that we lived off like animal meat is just ridiculous. No, it's like it was always at almost any time 50%. Vegetables, and we're talking. Oh, we just lost our thing again.
Weird.
Yeah, if you're looking at so tubers and grains and berries and fruits and all these other things. They're just always been a part of our diet in history and should remain so.
Can C60 be used for a skin tag type of cream? I've got a story about that.
That's yours.
So I got sunburnt this summer, so I was really fried. So I was putting C60 all over. Well, I had a skin tag and it turned black and fell off. So yes, you can use it. I was using MCT. So you could try that, or you could try any of the oils. They're all really nutritive and good for your skin. I like the MCT because it spreads nice and thinly and easy to put on.
I think there was somebody that had mentioned that in one of the questions we went over.
Yeah, about
MCT. One thing about MCT, they're short chain triglycerides. Well, usually here's a big chain triglyceride, you're looking at 12s and 14s. This is, the fats, they got double carbon bonds on them. Well, that's what with MCT things, they're really small. Normally coconut has like a 16 chain triglyceride on it. Well, when MCT basically is refine it, so you only got 10s, 8s, and 6s, and the body can't turn those into fats. What the body does is the liver turns those into ketones, which can be immediately used by your cells as energy source. So it's like a flex fuel for your energy source, for your cells, and so that's what's really important to get there. Yeah, we're having a little.
Sorry about the camera issue.
Yeah, it's coming on and off. We're gonna have to.
Why it's doing that?
Yeah, it's just something.
Okay. Yeah, I think I figured it out. Let me just put this over here.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
We're doing an instant tech solving.
I gotta plug it in on this side, I think. I have a hub, and I think it was causing some problems.
Yep, that should do. Ooh.
Whoa. Whoa.
That's not okay. Something changed there.
Okay. It's because it switched to my FaceTime camera.
Oh, man. There we go. Back again.
Sorry,
wonders, that's a modern technology.
Yeah.
It's always fun. But that's just part of the whole live world.
Yeah. So let's see what else we have, because I think we've got some more questions still. Avocado for healthy skin. Yes. Okay. Looks like that's all we have for questions.
Yeah. And that's another thing on the inflammatory is the oils. I think that was our last show that we did our last show about inflammation and the different oils that we had. So yeah,
we just released a video about that.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. And so that's one of the things is you got because people today, they just eat, if you got like fried foods, they're doing that in like canola oil or coconut oil or, who knows, sunflower oil or these other oils that have way too many omega-6s to their omega-3, because omega-3s to omega-6s should be like a 1-to-1 ratio. And right now in the modern American diet, it's like a 20-to-1 ratio. So eating healthy oils and avoiding fatty foods is really important too.
All right. Well, that's it for our questions today. We hope this was a great learning experience for you guys. We definitely learned a lot preparing for this show, and we're going to keep coming back to this topic. I know I am, because it's something I still deal with. But I hope that you all learned about, if you understand more about how the thyroid plays such an important role in your overall health, and some things you can start doing to help that. And of course, taking C60 every day is one of those things. So thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed our show, please give it a big thumbs up.
Yeah, and if you'd like
with your friends.
Yes, and if you'd like to try C60 for yourself, visit c60purplepower.com, and remember to use the coupon code the C60 Show for 10% off.
And if you're watching us on YouTube today, please subscribe to our channel and click that bell icon to get notifications every time we upload something new.
Oh, and thank you for everyone for your questions. And also, if you have any questions, send it to us.
Questions at c60purplepower.com.
Yeah, because we're